on CNBC. First, Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, member of the committee, and our guest host, former Federal Reserve Board governor and Columbia University professor Rick Mishkin. Senator, let me start with you. We had Leader Army on earlier. He liked very little about the stimulus plan. Is there anything you like about it?
I think there's not enough of the tax cuts. I do think tax cuts spur the economy, and I think it has been proven time and time and time again, from President Kennedy to President Reagan, and then in 2001, when our economy was down, it was the tax cuts that brought it back. I think if we look at the people who create jobs, it's the people that will spend from tax cuts. So I think targeted tax cuts there are not enough of in this package. And then on the spending side, I think we do need some spending, Joe, but this $1 trillion price tag is staggering when you look at the long term, and that a lot of this spending is not going to be the first 2 or 3 years. It's going to be 10 years out, and the debt then becomes such a huge issue.
Senator, are you in the camp? We've heard some varying opinions about this. Are you in the camp that the president was steamrolled by Pelosi and Reid, or that he's not unhappy with the way this bill looks now?
This is what I think. I don't think the president had anything to do with writing this bill, and the bill did not go through the normal procedures on the House or Senate side. So there was really no input from Republicans in the big bill. And I think that it's now a bill that you're trying to write with 100 people on the floor of the Senate, which is not ever going to work. And whether the president really likes it or not, I just can't tell. But I don't think it is the bill that he wrote, nor did it meet the test that he set out, which is targeted, timely, and temporary.
But is there a certain contingent of your party that would be against any bill, just not to own it in case it doesn't work, and then you can point fingers and there's an election in 2 years? And
no.
I mean, is there a contingent that wants the Democrats to own this?
No, I don't think so. I think what Republicans wanted was to have a real say, a back and forth, not just meeting with the president or with the leadership and talking about it and being civil, but having real input, having give and take, having tax cuts that are targeted. These tax cuts were tried last year and didn't work. $600 per person, it didn't stimulate the economy. Now we're talking about the same thing, very small paycheck reductions or increases, I guess, because you reduced the tax, and it didn't work. It didn't stimulate. What your guest said earlier is you need to have shock and awe, and that applies to tax cuts too.
Rick, what do you think of that, Professor?
Well, there are a lot of issues here. The bill does have a mix of both tax cuts and spending, and I think that's appropriate. There are issues, the details here, and I think the thing that I think is most critical, which the Senator mentioned, is the issue of the long term. That one of the things that's extremely important is that if you have a stimulus package which kicks in a lot of money temporarily, but does not indicate that there'll be future long-run increases in spending, that actually is likely to be much more effective in doing exactly what you want. The problem here is that, so if the spending now and tax cuts now can get people spending, restore confidence, that's a great thing. If, however, it's indication that people are just going to not worry about the budget in the future, that's actually a bad thing. That can actually mean that people worry about future higher taxes and spend less now. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I think that's going to be extremely important going forward is that there's discussion about what's going to happen in the longer run. And by the way, the big nightmare is not the current spending, it's the entitlements. It's the Social Security is one big problem, but Medicare is the monster that really scares everybody. So I think there needs to be some attention to the long run, but on the other hand, I do think we need some short-run stimulus.
Senator, do you care to comment on this Geithner plan that we're seeing? You think this is finally the one that's going to help us?
Well, let me say that I think the good part of what they're saying is that they're trying to get the private sector involved. Now, the private sector, of course, wants the insurance. They don't want the downside. But if we can do one of two things, which I think is what Secretary Geithner is trying to do, either have the private sector take some of the risk and not have it on the taxpayer, or if the taxpayer takes the risk and then there is a workout solution, the taxpayer has the upside in that the bad assets don't go all the way down. They are performing and they come back up. I think that his goal is right. I just want to hear more about how they're going to have the insurance to make sure that we don't have the worst of both worlds, which is that we subsidize the private sector to buy the bad assets, and then we also insure all of it so that the taxpayer gets the bill anyway.
Okay. Got it. Thank you, Senator. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. We always appreciate it. Good to see you. And Rick, you'll be with, Professor will be with us for the rest of the hour.